Dr. Marcus Reed stood on the polished terrazzo floor of the Caledonia Research Institute's main lobby, heart thudding with anticipation. In his gloved hand, he gripped his access badge, an RFID-embedded card that had granted him entry to the Institute's most secure virology suites for the past 3 years. Today, though, when he swiped it at the gleaming stainless steel turnstile, the reader flashed red and emitted a single accusing beep. He tried again, more deliberately, leaning in to ensure the badge's chip aligned perfectly with the sensor. The same rebuke sounded. Marcus frowned, glancing around the cavernous atrium. The vaulted glass ceiling filtered morning light onto sleek reception desks and glass-walled conference rooms. Colleagues in white lab coats passed by without noticing his dismay. A security guard, seated at a kiosk behind a plexiglass window, looked up only to give Marcus a curt nod. No offer of help, no apology. Marcus's mind raced. He had spent the last 6 months engineering a novel enzyme capable of neutralizing the Marburg-Zaire hybrid virus, one that, in animal models, had shown complete viral clearance in under 2 hours. The Institute had eagerly assigned him bench space in the Biosafety Level 3 suite just yesterday to begin final cell culture assays. Today was supposed to be the day he proved, once and for all, that his enzyme therapy could stop an otherwise lethal pathogen. He approached the reception desk where a young administrator pecked at a keyboard. "My badge won't let me into the BSL-3 lab," he said, voice tight with disbelief. She swiveled her chair, expression apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Dr. Reed. It shows your access has been revoked. You'll need to speak with HR." Marcus's pulse spiked. "Revoked? Why?" She offered a rehearsed shrug. "I don't have that information. Please schedule an appointment." Defeated, he walked toward the glass-walled corridor that led to the virology suites. Through the thick safety glass, he could see his team in blue gowns and powered air purifying respirators, meticulously pipetting viral cultures into multi-well plates. They glanced up when he passed, surprise registering in their eyes before they returned to work, carrying on as though his presence had simply evaporated. Marcus paused outside the airtight door, pressing his forehead against the cool window. Beyond it lay the incubators and biosafety cabinets that held the culmination of his life's work. Denied entry, he felt a hollow ache, part shock, part indignation. His badge remained useless in his pocket. The Institute had locked him out of the very breakthrough he'd fought so hard to achieve. And in that moment, Marcus Reed vowed he would not leave this story unfinished, no matter the cost. Sprosit ChatGPT. Under a moonless sky, Marcus Reed crept along the Institute's rear service corridor, every footstep muffled against the rubberized maintenance floor tiles. His lab coat, swapped for nondescript dark coveralls, brushed against the exposed conduit that snaked along the concrete walls. Earlier that evening, he had slipped out of his apartment, clad in latex gloves and a utility belt laden with tools. A slim RFID cloner, a magnetic door-pick set, and a compact flashlight with a red light mode. He paused at a heavy metal door marked Authorized Personnel Only and slid the RFID cloner's antenna over the card reader. In the lab's administrative networks, accessed from his secure home terminal, he'd identified a maintenance badge with full building privileges and cloned its signal in less than 10 seconds. The reader beeped twice and clicked open. Marcus slipped inside, heart hammering. The corridor beyond was dimly lit by intermittent emergency exit signs. He navigated past stacked crates of spare lab supplies, sterile gloves, pipette tips, disinfectant, and toward an unmarked door secured with a magnetic lock. Whisper-quiet alarm sensors painted the wall in faint points of red light. Marcus retrieved a slim magnet from his belt, pressed it against the sensor array, and held his breath as the door's mechanism yielded with a soft whir. Inside the virology wing, the atmosphere was sterile and faintly chilled. Rows of BSL-3 labs lay either dark or occupied by lone night shift technicians working under strict protocols. Marcus hugged the shadows, passing a sealed lab door where a technician in full gear donned gloves and respiratory mask. He averted his eyes and moved on. No witnesses. He reached the final airlock, two stainless steel doors in series, separated by a small anteroom. Access required dual authentication, badge swipe, and fingerprint. Marcus swiped his cloned badge at the outer door. It slid open. Inside the anteroom, a biometric scanner awaited. He unclipped a thin adhesive pad from his belt, a polydimethylsiloxane mold he'd pressed to a consenting colleague's fingerprint earlier that week, and pressed it firmly to the scanner. The inner door unlatchingly hissed open. Stepping into the BSL-3 suite, Marcus felt the weight of the negative pressure environment, designed to contain deadly pathogens. Each heartbeat thumped in his ears beneath the noise of ventilated air. The central workbench glowed under bright task lighting, lined with rows of cell culture plates inoculated with live Marburg-Zaire hybrid virus. At one end sat the incubator Marcus had used for preliminary tests. Its digital display read 37.0 deg C. With practiced precision, he placed the racks in front of his portable laminar flow hood, an enclosed stainless steel box he'd smuggled in under his coat. He powered up its internal blower, flicked on the ultraviolet sterilizing light, and let it run for 30 seconds. Then, in rapid succession, he retrieved his purified enzyme solution, stored in a temperature-controlled case that maintained 4 degrees Celsius, and pipetted precise volumes into each infected well. His breath caught with every fluid transfer. A single miscalculation would invalidate the entire experiment. Next, Marcus initiated his battery-powered PCR machine, wired into a sealed outlet designated for emergencies. He programmed the thermal cycling protocol, denaturation at 95 degrees, annealing at 60 degrees, extension at 72 degrees, optimized to detect viral RNA levels. As the machine whirred through its cycles, he transferred microcentrifuge tubes to a handheld centrifuge for rapid spins, and then loaded agarose gels into an adjacent electrophoresis chamber. Outside, a faint hum indicated the night shift alarms were nearing a scheduled self-test. Security cameras momentarily blinded. Marcus seized the chance, removing the gel trays and photographing each fluorescent band with his tablet's macro lens. The images displayed a dramatic disappearance of viral RNA signal in enzyme-treated samples compared to controls. His pulse raced as the data confirmed what he had long suspected. His enzyme eradicated the virus. He meticulously logged timestamps, batch numbers, and replicate identifiers on a waterproof lab notebook. With the final photograph taken, Marcus wiped down his work area with antiviral disinfectant, decontaminated his gloves in the chemical wash station, and retraced his path through the airlock. Each door closed with a reassuring click behind him, erasing his presence. Emerging into the silent service corridor, Marcus allowed himself a deep breath. His clandestine operation, risky, unauthorized, and fraught with peril, had yielded definitive proof. An incurable virus could indeed be vanquished. Clutching his notebook and encrypted tablet, he vanished into the night, carrying the data that would force the Institute to acknowledge his genius or condemn him for breaching its sacred walls. The sun had barely crested the horizon when alarms blared through the empty halls of the Caledonia Research Institute. Security cameras in the virology wing recorded an unauthorized badge swipe at 2:03 a.m., followed by the magnetic lock override at the BSL-3 anteroom at 2:05 a.m. By 6:30 a.m., Dr. Marcus Reed was escorted, hands raised, lab coat neatly folded, into the Institute's executive boardroom, flanked by two stern-faced security officers. Inside, the Institute's director, Dr. Evelyn Cho, sat at the head of a long mahogany table beneath a bank of LCD screens, replaying the overnight footage. Around her, department heads and senior researchers exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus's heart pounded as he stepped forward, data in hand. Dr. Cho's voice, calm but cutting, filled the silent room. Dr. Reed, you have violated multiple protocols, accessed restricted areas, and tampered with live viral cultures without authorization. Explain yourself. Marcus lifted his chin. I did what was necessary to validate our enzyme's efficacy. Here. He placed a stack of waterproof lab notebooks, an encrypted tablet, and the printed gel electrophoresis photographs on the table. These timestamps, logged by the PCR machine's secure clock, show the viral RNA bands in my control samples and their complete absence in the enzyme-treated replicates. I have proof. The Marburg-Zaire hybrid virus cannot replicate in the presence of the neutralizing enzyme we developed. The room crackled with tension as Dr. Cho leaned in to examine the data. One by one, she and the virology chief, Dr. Amin Patel, reviewed the GL images. 9 wells of control lanes glowing under UV, clear 200 base pair bands, contrasted starkly by 9 enzyme-treated wells showing no such bands. Marcus opened his notebook to detailed logs of each step. Incubation times, reagent lot numbers, machine cycle counts. Dr. Patel, whose skepticism had fueled Marcus's earlier sidelining, whispered to Cho, then cleared his throat. These results are unequivocal. If validated, this represents a genuine cure for a virus we've long deemed unstoppable. A murmur rippled through the board members. Dr. Cho's expression softened from stern reproach to cautious intrigue. She pressed a button on the conference phone. Security, remove the handcuffs. Doctor. Reed, you are suspended with pay pending protocol review, but this data will be fast-tracked to our Safety and Efficacy Committee. As the cuffs clicked open, Marcus felt a flood of relief. He watched Dr. Cho forward his images to the night shift virology team with commands to repeat the assays under supervision. Within the hour, Marcus was escorted back to the BSL-3 anteroom, this time with proper authorization, and stood by as his colleagues replicated the experiment. Before noon, identical gel bands confirmed his midnight work. Enzyme lanes clear, control lanes bright. That afternoon, Dr. Cho convened an emergency press briefing. With Marcus at her side, badge reinstated and lab coat returned, she addressed assembled reporters. Thanks to Dr. Reed's initiative, we have identified a potent enzyme therapy that neutralizes the Marburg-Zaire hybrid virus in vitro. We will accelerate clinical translation immediately. Behind the podium, Marcus felt the weight of every barred door and every skeptical glance lift from his shoulders. The Institute had condemned him for a breach of protocol, yet in that very breach lay the proof of a cure. As cameras flashed and microphones recorded his first public words, "Science demands courage and sometimes defiance," he knew the midnight risk had been worth the dawn of a new era in virology. By mid-morning, the entire Institute was abuzz with the fallout of the unauthorized BSL-3 entry. In the cafeteria's reflective windows, Marcus Reed saw huddles of colleagues whispering his name, gloved hands gesturing toward the virology wing. He had scarcely finished his clandestine data replication when security officers, stern as stone, intercepted him in the corridor. They led him through a labyrinth of glass-walled labs and quiet offices until the doors of the executive boardroom loomed before him. Inside, seated in high-backed leather chairs, were the Institute's director, Dr. Evelyn Cho, the chief virologist, Dr. Amin Patel, the head of compliance, and several board members whose curious eyes flicked between Marcus and a series of projection screens displaying the overnight surveillance footage. The red time stamp in the corner read 02:05 a.m. Dr. Cho's voice cut through the hush. "Dr. Reed, please state your case." Marcus swallowed, heart hammering, then stepped forward. He placed 3 items on the polished oak table: his encrypted tablet, a stack of waterproof lab notebook pages, and a set of transparent gel photographs, each labeled with date, time, and experiment number. "With all due respect," Marcus began, voice steady despite the tension, "I willingly bypassed security to validate our enzyme's efficacy against the Marburg-Zaire hybrid virus. These documents are my proof." He tapped the first photograph, 9 control lanes glowing under UV illumination. "Here, untreated cultures show robust viral RNA bands. And here, He slid the enzyme-treated gel forward. Those bands are completely absent. A murmur swept through the room as Dr. Patel leaned in to examine the images. The compliance officer frowned. You understand this is a severe breach of protocol? You could be dismissed. Outright. Marcus met her gaze. Yes. But if these results hold, if the virus truly cannot replicate in the presence of this enzyme, then every minute of delay costs lives. I chose data over bureaucracy. Doctor. Cho raised a hand, calling for quiet. She toggled to his PCR amplification logs, then to screenshots of the electrophoresis gel photos on the tablet, each file time-stamped by the locked system clock of the portable PCR unit. Your methods, she said, voice uncharacteristically quiet, are impeccable. And the data is irrefutable. Silence reigned as the board members processed the revelation. Then Dr. Patel, the skeptic whose earlier objections had cost Marcus his lab access, nodded slowly. We must replicate this under formal oversight immediately. If validated, this enzyme therapy represents the first effective countermeasure against a pathogen of global concern. Dr. Cho stood, imposing in her authority. Effective immediately, Dr. Reed, your access is reinstated. You will lead the supervised replication studies alongside Dr. Patel's team. The Safety and Efficacy Committee will convene tomorrow to fast-track this into preclinical animal trials. She turned to the compliance officer. And we will review and revise our security protocols. Clearly, we nearly lost a breakthrough because of undue obstruction. As the boardroom doors opened to usher Marcus back toward the BSL-3 wing, colleagues offered nods of respect rather than stares of condemnation. In the virology suite's anteroom, Dr. Patel offered her gloved hand. Welcome back, she said softly. Scientist first. Just minutes later, under proper authorization, Marcus and a team of senior virologists reran his assays. The familiar hum of incubators and the glow of biosafety hoodlights felt profoundly different, no longer the shadows of illicit work, but the bright dawn of a verified cure. As they watched control samples blossom with viral plaques while enzyme-treated wells remained sterile, Marcus realized that his midnight defiance had not only exposed the cure, but had exonerated him, restoring trust in the power of scientific courage. By dawn's light on the third day, word of Marcus Reed's clandestine discovery had rippled beyond the Institute's walls. News outlets flashed headlines. Midnight miracle, scientists' rogue lab work yields viral cure. And, from outcast to savior, Dr. Reed's enzyme breakthrough. By mid-morning, representatives from the National Institutes of Health, the World Health Organization, and leading pharmaceutical firms were on the phone, each requesting urgent briefings and data transfers. Back at Caledonia, the Institute's executive suite bustled with activity. Dr. Evelyn Cho convened an emergency strategy meeting in the glass-walled conference room. Seated around the table were department heads, PR officers, and the chief legal counsel. Marcus, no longer shackled by suspicion, joined them at the head of the table, his reinstated security badge gleaming on his lapel. Cho began. We have an unprecedented opportunity and responsibility to shepherd this enzyme therapy from bench to bedside. She delegated tasks with decisive authority. The preclinical director would oversee large animal trials starting next week. The regulatory affairs team would prepare an accelerated investigational new drug application to the FDA, and the communications office would coordinate a unified media campaign highlighting both the Institute's support and Marcus's heroism. Within hours, Marcus was seated alongside Dr. Amin Patel in the BSL-3 suite, supervising a scaled-up run of his enzyme assays in ferret and non-human primate models. Lab technicians, once wary of his presence, now looked to him for guidance, handling viral inoculations with reverence and precision. Every data point was meticulously recorded: viral load measurements, cytokine panels, and enzyme pharmacokinetics. By late afternoon, preliminary primate results showed undetectable viral RNA levels and no adverse effects, a breakthrough of even greater consequence than the cell culture findings. Simultaneously, a delegation from the WHO arrived, led by Dr. Helena Strauss, Director of Emerging Pathogens. In a side room, Marcus presented his full dataset: raw gel images, PCR amplification curves, and primate trial charts, while Strauss's team taped notes on tablets. She looked up, eyes bright. "Dr. Reed, this is exactly the tool we need for rapid outbreak response. We'll integrate your enzyme into our global emergency stockpile." That evening, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at Caledonia's annual research symposium, an event he had been disinvited from only days before. The room fell silent as he spoke. "Science advances not by safe steps, but by bold leaps, sometimes taken in the middle of the night." He walked the audience through his methodology, every unauthorized hinge in his narrative reinforcing the imperative of data over dogma. As applause thundered, Marcus scanned the crowd, supportive colleagues, once skeptical supervisors, and visiting dignitaries who now treated him as the Institute's chief innovator. Following the talk, the provost publicly presented Marcus with the Caledonia Medal for Scientific Courage, its gold medallion hanging from a velvet ribbon. And under this symbolic vindication, Marcus felt the journey from pariah to pioneer reach its said apex. In the days that followed, licensing negotiations began with biopharma companies eager to produce the enzyme at scale, while engineering teams at Caledonia retooled manufacturing lines for GMP-compliant production. Marcus formed a multidisciplinary consortium: virologists, immunologists, pharmacologists, and process engineers, all united in the mission he had sparked under cover of darkness. By the end of the week, the Institute's rooftop banner read, "Thank you, Dr. Reed, your courage saves lives." As he walked beneath it to the virology lab, colleagues shook his hand and offered heartfelt thanks. He paused at the BSL-3 anteroom door, placing his hand on the badge scanner. The reader chimed green, and the door swished open. No theft, no defiance now, only the quiet affirmation that his midnight experiment had reshaped the future of medicine and restored the integrity of scientific pursuit. When the final regulatory approval arrived, Dr. Marcus Reed found himself standing on the dais of the World Health Assembly in Geneva, the same auditorium where world leaders once debated policy and budgets. Behind him stretched a panorama of national flags, each one representing a nation now poised to deploy his enzyme therapy against the Marburg-Zaire hybrid virus. The packed hall of ministers, scientists, and patient advocates fell silent as he approached the microphone, his security badge still clipped to his lapel, a symbol of both defiance and redemption. He began with a measured breath, voice resonant over the hushed microphone. "Distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, today we stand united under a shared commitment to protect every life, regardless of borders. 2 years ago, I was denied access to the very lab I needed. Today, we celebrate a cure born from that denial, a cure that will save countless lives." Behind him, a giant screen displayed a montage: cell culture gels showing viral clearance, animal models with restored health, and, finally, the first human. Patients discharged from treatment, their smiles lighting hospital corridors. He detailed the global rollout plan: emergency stockpiles to be pre-positioned in regional centers, mobile infusion units ready to deploy at short notice, and a technology transfer initiative to train local biomedical teams in enzyme production. He emphasized equitable access, announcing a tiered pricing model that would ensure low-income countries received the therapy at minimal or no cost, funded by a coalition of philanthropic and governmental resources. As he spoke, Marcus scanned the faces in the assembly: health ministers nodding in approval, NGO representatives jotting notes, survivors wiping tears. He recounted the journey from clandestine midnight assays to this moment of worldwide consensus. "Science," he declared, thrives when curiosity overcomes caution, and when institutions trust the courage of those who push boundaries for the greater good. After his address, ministers queued to shake his hand, one after another from small island nations to the largest world powers, each offering gratitude and pledges of cooperation. In the VIP lounge afterward, he joined Dr. Helena Strauss of the WHO and Dr. Evelyn Cho of the Caledonia Institute in signing the Global Enzyme Access Accord, a binding agreement to share data, resources, and best practices. Later that evening, as the summit adjourned and conference center lights dimmed, Marcus stepped onto a balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. The water gleamed under moonlight, and the distant chime of cathedral bells drifted across the air. He held a small vial of purified enzyme, the same formulation he had pipetted by flashlight in the dead of night, and reflected on how a barred door once defined the limits of his ambition. Now, that same enzyme would flow through hospitals on every continent, a testament to the power of perseverance and the moral imperative to heal. Below him, the summit banners fluttered softly in the breeze, united for health, innovation without borders, from denial to deliverance. In that tranquil moment, Marcus Reed understood that his story, once one of exclusion and risk, had become a beacon of global solidarity. As he walked back inside, carrying the vial as both a keepsake and a promise, he knew that the darkest nights of scientific endeavor could yield the brightest dawns of human hope.